So did you know that even the really big tech giants, I mean, I'm talking about the Googles, the Microsofts, those companies, the really large tech firms are actually focused on producing products and services for a new market. Well, at least it will sound like it's new. Normally, those companies build products for other large companies. They can charge high ticket dollars for them, but they're also building products for a really small individual segment of the business world, and that is for freelancers. As a matter of fact, a few years ago, I was fortunate enough to do a project with one of the big tech giants. And the project I did for them, they were actually working on a suite of products to build specifically for freelancers. And interestingly enough, the way they were going to market that product was through a podcast that was targeting freelancers. And I found that really, really intriguing that these enormous companies were focusing on individuals with businesses, freelancers, contract workers, gig economy, those types of folks. I found that really, really neat. And while I was doing that project with them, they had me do some research. And at the time, I candidly can't remember the source, but at the time, the prediction was that by 2025, so 2 years from now, 70% of the US would have some sort of side gig, some sort of hustle going on. And that was true across the world. So 70% of the population may actually have some sort of side gig or hustle going on the side. I found that really, really interesting. Me, that makes perfect sense. I've been freelancing and doing side hustles and gigs for over 10 years now. It's been a great experience. It's been hard. I've put in some long, hard nights at times. Some of the opportunities I've ventured out into have worked, some have not, but it's been beneficial. You know, just the fact of making some extra money and paying off debt, that's what we used it for, or paying for vacations, those types of things have been really, really nice. So I've enjoyed the whole freelance process, the whole gig economy process. There's lots of resources out there that can help you do it and help you be successful in it. There's two main categories I've found that people fall into when they want to freelance in some way. It's what I talked about earlier. They kind of want to offset their income in some way. They want to make some extra money. What they use it for is really up to them, obviously, but I've seen it where they just use it to subsidize their income, to have a better lifestyle, or some people use that extra money to pay down debt, pay for vacations. They reinvest back into a business and try and grow it to a larger business. The other is for people who just really want to work for themselves. Maybe they're not satisfied in a day job and they don't enjoy it, and they just want to, get to a place where they could work for themselves. And of course, you see all the times these ads on social media about the gurus who are making six figures freelancing or $1 million freelancing in 90 days, that type of thing. That is not what I'm here to convince you of. But from personal experience, I've made somewhere between $10,000 and $50,000 a year doing freelance work. And so I think that's a reasonable goal to shoot for if that's something that interests you. And if it is, I've developed a free email course that you can take. It's 7 days of emails where I'll walk you through the process of getting started as a freelancer. And today I'm going to share with you 3 questions that you should ask. This is actually comes out of the first email that I send as part of this course. I'm sorry, the second email I send as part of this course. The first is a welcome email. And so there's 3 main questions I want you to focus on if you're interested in freelancing. And so the first is just why you're interested in freelancing. I talked about it before. If you're wanting to be a billionaire, then let's just stop right there. Most likely as a freelancer, you're not going to be a billionaire. As a matter of fact, most freelancers, I know there are some that do better, but on average, freelancers tend to replace their income. I think the average freelance incomes I've seen is somewhere between $50,000 and $70,000. That's completely full time. And that's probably not straight out of the gate. It takes some time to get there. So if your goal is to be a millionaire, then you need to go ahead and stop and do something else. But if your goal is to make some extra money, then freelancing is perfect for you. I mean, $500 a month is going to go a really, really long way in most people's incomes. The stats I've seen when I'm working with people on their finances is the average American can't afford a $400 to $600 emergency. They don't have that money set aside. I get it. Things are expensive right now. So what would freelancing and having an extra $500 a month do for you and your family? Would matter a lot. So make sure the reason that you're wanting to go into freelancing really aligns with what the outcomes realistically can be. Otherwise, you're setting yourself for some failure. So assign that North Star. What's the why? What's the reason you want to freelance, and use that to drive you, and make sure that you're going about it the right way and that it can realistically help you accomplish that why. Again, we've all seen these gurus talking about things, working from Bali, the beach, on the beach in Bali and making millions of dollars. That's probably not going to happen for most people. So understand why you're going to do it. The next question I have you ask yourself is, how many hours per week are you willing to commit? And I actually use this when I'm talking with folks who want to work with me on some of the businesses I have. They see the outcome, they see some level of success, and they're interested in getting to that place and be helping them get to that place. And so having your North Star is great, but then you have to understand how much time and effort you're willing to put in the first place. So how many hours a week can you commit to what you're doing? Is it 5 hours a week? Is it 10 hours a week? What are you willing to do? In my early days of freelancing, I put in a lot more than that. Now these days I'm down to 5 to 10 hours per week. I have some processes in place and some products in place that create revenue, sort of not necessarily on autopilot. I don't want to mislead you there, but they do create some level of passive income. So how much time can you really put in? So the thing to think about here is to tie this question, this how many hours you're willing to work, back to question number one, which is your why. So tie all of these together. So for example, if your why was to be a millionaire in question one, and then in question two, you're willing to commit 5 hours per week, you're probably not going to get there. Now, again, I know there's edge cases, but the averages are still true. Whereas if you're saying, hey, I'll commit 20 hours a week to freelancing, maybe that can really drive you toward eventually replacing your day job, right? So make sure these two things align. And then the last question I want you to ask yourself is how long you're willing to put in that work. So question one is why, question two is how many hours per week, and question three is how long are you willing to do those hours per week? So it doesn't do you any real good if you're going to put in 20 hours a week for 1 week. That doesn't do any good. That's not consistency. With freelancing, you have to put in some consistent work. It's like any other type of business. You have to do it consistently to get the results that you want to do. So again, we're going back to this idea of tying all this together. If your North Star is to make $500 per month and you're willing to commit 20 hours a week for 6 months, question number three, how long for 6 months, then that's a pretty realistic combination. If you can't get to $500 per week after 20 hours per week, basically a good part-time job for half of a year, then you might be doing some things wrong. And those things align to me. Whereas if the answers were, well, I want $1 million and I'm willing to put in 1 hour per week and I'm willing to do that for the next 3 months, then your sort of your goals do not align with what you're willing to do. And so just to tie all this together, those 3 questions are really important. Write them down, put them in writing so it cements in your brain, compare them to each other, make sure they make sense. And then if it does make sense, then you're on the right track toward freelance success. If you're not, you need to realign sort of your expectations with what you're willing to do to get there. And the last thing I want to say on this is when you're answering these questions, take a hard look in the mirror. And what I mean by that is be willing to be honest with yourself. The other thing I've seen happen is people who say, I'm willing to give it a full year without even counting the dollars that I make. They're just willing to put in a full year of work without looking back and seeing the success they have or haven't had. Well, that sounds great. That sounds like a lot of commitment. And I'm really proud of you if that's true. But also, is that realistic? Is that you? Are you the type person willing to do that? I'm really good at being transparent with myself lately. And I'll just tell you the truth is I'm not one of those people. I'm not someone who's going to put 12 months into a venture, 20 hours a week, and have made $0 and not be second guessing that was a bad business model or that I was doing something wrong or my marketing wasn't right or the product didn't have market fit, all those things. So just make sure that you're being realistic with your expectations and the activities that you're going to put in. And if this interests you at all, again, I've developed an entirely free course. I'm going to put the link in the description below. You can register for it. Over 7 days, I'll send you 7 emails. A couple of them start out with these types of activities, and then we dive into things around developing your niche, how to come up with a marketing plan, and also how to price what you're going to do as a freelancer. So if that's interesting to you, please take a look at it. If you have any questions, I'd love to see comments below. Otherwise, I appreciate you spending time with me today. Thanks a lot.